Hi, I'm Ross. This is the second edition of my new football podcast. Thanks to everyone who watched the first episode. In this episode, I'm going to look at why tournament football is different. Now, this is in the context of Scotland's performance at the World Cup. I'm looking at the World Cup still through a Scottish lens. And that lens is an optimistic one, which is why this podcast, in the early days, is called Grass Half Full, because I thought it was a pun that shone light on what I'm trying to do with this. I'm still more optimistic about the immediate future of Scottish football than a lot of other people are. So the start of this podcast is getting those ideas across, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So, why is tournament football different? I've got a few big reasons why that's the case. And I didn't plan to do a second episode so quick on the back of the first one, but I was watching the 3 games yesterday as I record this, and that was England against Democratic Republic of Congo, Senegal against Belgium, and US against Bosnia. And across those 3 games, the same themes repeated, which will help contextualize Scotland's showing at the World Cup. So the first thing is that the draw really matters. Now, we know Scotland had an incredibly difficult draw. They got 2 of the best teams in the world, Brazil and Morocco, in their group. It shouldn't have really worked out that way. Morocco really should have been a top seed, placed at the position number 1 in one of the groups. But because there's 3 host nations at this World Cup, a couple of teams got bumped down. Morocco were then in pot 2. They were the pot 2 team that Scotland drew. Along with that, Scotland drew Brazil from pot 1. So 2 tough games. Could have been an easier draw. Let's look at the 3 games that I just chatted about and look at why the draw really helped all of those teams. I think every team that played in those games, England, DR Congo, USA, Bosnia, Senegal, Belgium, they'd have all taken that draw for their last 32 game. I can only imagine, had Scotland qualified for the last 32, how events would probably have transpired so that we got France or Spain in that round. But if you look at DR Congo, they came top of the 3rd placed teams, which was that was the category that Scotland were trying to get into. Their reward was a game against England. I think they'd have taken that. 2nd place was Sweden. They got France. I'm sure that's a game they really didn't want to have. And then the 3rd position was Ghana, and they get Colombia. Now, Colombia are a good team. I think they're being undervalued. I think if the tournament plays out, that Argentina get through, Colombia get through, and that's a quarter-final match, I think it would be. I think Colombia can give them a tough test. But still, I think Sweden got hard done by there with their 2nd place finished in that category of 3rd place teams, getting France. Last place in the category of 3rd place teams was Senegal. We know that because they were the only team that also got 3 points and got through. So Scotland had 3 points, went out on goal difference. Senegal's goal difference, I think, ended up being 5 goals better off than Scotland. Their reward for getting through was Belgium. Now, Belgium are a good team, but they're not Spain, they're not France, they're not Argentina. I think Senegal would have taken that. On the flip side, Belgium, they'd have been thinking, I'm sure, well, Senegal are a good team. Let's say they're African champions, despite the still yet, I think, unresolved situation from the African Cup of Nations final against Morocco. I think there's still maybe a decision to be made in court about who actually gets that title. But I think, Belgium would have been happy enough. Senegal would have been happy enough. So all that illustrates that the draw really matters. You know, Paraguay were 7th in the 3rd place rankings, and they ended up with Germany. Now, on paper, you think Germany, awesome, but having watched their performances at the World Cup, I think anyone who got through would have fancied their chances against that Germany team. Now, credit to Paraguay for getting it done. Really impressive. And beating a powerhouse like Germany isn't easy. I'm not saying it is, but I think, based on performance that we saw at the World Cup, Germany are no great shakes. And for you to be 7th in the third place rankings and then get through and get Germany, I think that's a big win. So let's keep Scotland's performance at the World Cup in the context of the draw really mattering and with continued understanding that Scotland were up against it right from the start as the draw happened. Now we get to the games themselves. And in knockout football, games are about moments. Let's park the idea. I think this idea has come out of Scotland's World Cup showing that we need to rip it up, start again, create a new blueprint for the future, all this kind of stuff. I think a far bigger factor in games where, you know, a win or a loss can send you through or send you out is that big moments matter. And that's really, although it was group stage football, this idea of big moments mattering really happened in Scotland's games. And I will illustrate my point by talking about a couple of things that happened in Scotland's games, but also using what happened in the 3 knockout ties that I watched yesterday to illustrate my point. So the first thing about there being big moments is that if you have a number 9 that can score you goals and bail you out, then you are in a great place. So Harry Kane did it for England, Romelu Lukaku came on and did it for Belgium, and Balogun did it for America. He got them off and running. Yes, he got sent off later on, but what a tournament he's had so far, and he has really helped that team. And I certainly was going into the tournament not really appreciating how good a player he was or the impact he would have. Lukaku wasn't great early doors for Belgium, but when they really needed him, when they were 2-0 down against Senegal, he came on, he got the goal, he got it back to 2-1, and then Belgium eventually went on and won, and then England up against it against DR Congo, 1-0 down. Who's the guy that comes through and gets them 2 goals? Harry Kane. So the number 9 having a striker that can really bail you out when you need it is huge. That's an area where Scotland right now aren't massively blessed. I think the best finisher on our team is Lawrence Shankland, and I think he can get us a goal. I'd say the issue when he plays against really good opposition is probably he's not the most physically dominant striker. I think centre-halves can get the better of him. He's not as strong holding up the ball to get us up the pitch that will then get the ball into the box that will then give him the chance to score. I think if the ball arrived in the box and we were looking for a Scottish player to put it away, I'd probably pick Shankland out of these players that are at the squad. But he has his limitations. I like him as a player. I think he's a good player, but he's not in the class of some of these strikers that I've mentioned thus far. And then from the other guys in the squad, they've all got their attributes. Ross Stewart, Shea Adams, Lyndon Dykes, but they don't have huge goal-scoring pedigrees. So let's make it more optimistic. When Scotland are looking for a number 9 to come on and get them a goal, which is so important in tournament football, who do they turn to? Well, 2 guys I mentioned in my first video that give me an immense amount of hope for the future are Kieran Bowie and Robbie Ewart. And from what I've seen of them, as I've started to study more about those 2 guys, I'm further filled with encouragement. So Kieran Bowie, playing for Verona in Serie A, he only scored 4 goals in 14 games in Serie A last season. So not a massively prolific return. But a couple of things. He's only 23. He's got plenty of time to develop. Let's look at Harry Kane. Harry Kane was not the marksman that he is now way earlier in his career. Like, we've seen him develop over time. Also, Kieran Bowie, while not being the most prolific, one trait that he seems to have is big goals against really good opposition. So he scored against Juventus, and he scored against Inter Milan, and they were both really, really impressive finishes that weren't just tap-ins. Like, there was a chance. It wasn't a high percentage chance of scoring, I would say, and he was able to put the ball away. That fills me with encouragement that in the future, if it's a Euros or a World Cup and there's a moment, there's a chance, it's not necessarily an amazing chance with a high expected goal return, but it's a chance. He could be a guy to put it away. I don't want to put too much pressure on him. Let's see how he develops, but it's a reason to be optimistic. Then we have Robbie Ewer, 22 years old, playing for Sirius in Sweden. Someone who's just come on my radar right now as I start to study players who could have an impact on Scotland going forward. 7 goals in 10 games. So I'd say that's relatively prolific. It's not the strongest league in Europe that he's playing in, but that is a good return. Also, his profile suggests that he will grow into being a really, really good number 9. So there's 2 players, there's 2 strikers that keep me optimistic in the category of games are about moments, and having a number 9 who can score goals will really help you in tournament football. What else will help? Well, the keeper either making saves or equally not making big mistakes. That's huge in tournament football. So in all the games we saw that, or either side of that. So I'd say the goal England conceded against DR Congo, Jordan Pickford should have done better with. Could he have bailed him out from a situation that really came about from good DR Congo play, but also abysmal England defending? I'd like to think if that was my keeper in a huge World Cup, they can make that save for me. At the other end, the DR Congo keeper played unbelievably well for the most part, making a lot of saves, keeping his team in it. Then we had Senegal against Belgium. The Senegal goalkeeper played pretty well right up until towards the end of the game. That second Belgium goal, where cross is slung into the box, I think there's maybe a little push from Tielemans that he gets away with on the defender. More on that sort of thing happening later, but the keeper misses the punch and Tielemans scores the header. You know, and like that's a huge moment. Huge moment. And then, admittedly, I haven't seen loads of the USA Bosnia game because it was on at a poor start time for me going to bed. But I think amongst that, there's illustrations that, like, you know, a keeper, if he can make big save in big moment and also equally not make a big mistake in a big moment, that's huge. Angus Gunn, thought he had a good World Cup. There was that second Brazil goal, though, just before half-time. Could he have got to the cross? Probably. If he does and it's only 1-0 at half-time, is it a different game? Well, it is a different game. Will the result be different? The outcome be different? Probably not, but it's just an illustration that, if he could have made a more positive contribution at that moment, it would have been really helpful. But I think his overall play suggests that he will be a good goalkeeper for Scotland across the next cycle of trying to qualify for major tournaments. I think he's got at least 2 World Cups left in him. I think he's about 30 years of age. So, if there's next World Cups in 4 years and the World Cup after that is 4 years later, 8 years, he'd be 38 at that one. Like, loads of time. He just needs regular football. Hopefully he can get it. But games are about moments. The keeper making saves or not making mistakes, huge. The striker scoring a goal or missing a big chance. Like, the other side of that, look at Johan Vissa for DR Congo, hit the post from close range. If that goes in, 2-0 DR Congo, different game. You know, and that's what it comes down to. Substitutes. It doesn't matter so much to me how the team starts the game, how they play, passages of play, system, shapes. Of course, if you play better, you're more likely to win. But a lot of times in these big games, it's the changes through the games that make a big difference to what's going on. If you can just hang in there, if you're not playing that well and have subs come on that make an impact, huge. That happened for England. Anthony Gordon coming on made a huge difference. happened for Belgium. I thought Nico Raskin was excellent when he came on. I don't think Belgium or England played particularly well for the most part of their games, but when they needed it, they were able to make a difference off the bench. I think in my first pod of this new endeavour, I highlighted how I can see young Scottish players like 20-year-old Ben Gannon-Doak, 20-year-old Finlay Curtis, 19-year-old Lennon Miller coming into the squad and being the sort of player that in the very near future we can take off the bench and they can make a big difference, or we can start them, and if they're not playing that well, hopefully their addition to the squad means that there are other players who are perhaps getting a little bit older who can then be the guy that comes off the bench. So it's like, do you start 20-year-old Ben Gannon-Doak, or do you start John McGinn, who's 31? They both offer different things. You pick one. If it's not working, you can bring on the other one. John McGinn's still got time left in a Scotland shirt. I think the left side of the team is a bit more, a bit less strong, shall we say. But Finlay Curtis at 20 is one I've got a lot of hope in. I mentioned before, I've heard the name Kyle Joseph. He's currently at Hull, 24 years old. Hopefully he can push on. But if we can get a bit more strength and depth in these wide areas so that whatever we start the game with, if it's not working out, we can make a change and the player that comes on can make an impact. That would be huge going forward. We've seen in the World Cup big moments, subs making big differences despite their teams not playing that well. I hear a lot of chat coming out of the World Cup about how Scotland, struggle to pass the ball, struggle with a style of play, etc., etc. There is that. I'd love to see Scotland develop going forward. I'd also love to see Scotland be able to hang in there in big games and then have subs that came on that make an impact and have a number 9 that can get a goal and have a keeper that keeps a clean sheet and keeps us in it. I think that's bigger. And then the last point would be, as tough as our draw was, that's something we can't control. The number 9, the keeper and the subs, there is an element of that being a controllable as long as we have the players that can fulfill that roles. And I think we do. I'm trying to illustrate that through the pods. As for referees making decisions that help you or hinder you, we saw in those games decisions that could have gone either way. Should Harry Kane have been given a penalty or not? I don't think he should, but it's a subjective call. Once the referee makes a decision on the field, the VAR bar at the World Cup is very, very high for it to be overturned. I would love to see that come into Scottish football next season and not have the re-refereeing of games from people watching it on television. I think if that had happened in Scottish football last season, we may well have had a different outcome in the title race. That all said, the not giving of a pen there, it could have gone either way. It went DR Congo's way in that instance. But the Senegal game against Belgium, same again. Should Belgium have had that late penalty? It's very, very harsh on Senegal. The decision went against them. It's like these referee decisions can go either way. And if they don't go for you, or they do go for you, they are huge moments that have huge effects. And we saw that with Scotland against Morocco. Like, it quite possibly Scotland could have had 1 or 2 penalties against Morocco. We're 1-0 down when those decisions are made. If the decisions are made and we score the penalty at 1-1, if we get 4 points, we're going through. Senegal would not go through. We would make that list of teams who all got 4 points. I don't know exactly where we would have sat in it. Knowing our luck, we'd probably have got a team like France in the next round. But that said, it's just an illustration that like these decisions, these moments really, really matter. And I think it had a big effect on Scotland. And I think the criticisms of Scotland's performance against Morocco are a bit overblown. I think we did well in that game. It wasn't an amazing performance. It wasn't a pitiful performance. We had 20 touches in their box, if memory serves me correctly. Morocco had 26. They created 2 big chances, I think it was. We created 1. We didn't get 2 shouts for a penalty. Also, there was a possible denying of a goal scoring opportunity where it was really far out, and it's a bit of a subjective decision, but the defender seemed to haul Che Adams down when he could have been clean through and goal. So that's another decision. So is there anything else that helps illustrate my point? If you don't agree with my point, please get in the comments and let me know. If you do agree with my point, which is tournament football is different and big games are about big moments, and then 3 or 4 illustrations of that are number 9 scoring goals for you, keeper making saves or not making a mistake, subs being impactful, and a referee making decisions that are more helpful to you than not, along with the fact that the draw really, really matters. They are all important considerations to take into account when considering Scotland's performance at this World Cup and as Scotland go into other tournaments going forward. Let's, at least when we're analysing the situation, have a better appreciation and understanding of what's going on. That's the aim of this pod. So if I've helped with that, let me know. If I haven't helped with that, let me know. And hopefully I'll be back soon with some more podcasts along this format. So please like, subscribe, get in the comments, tell your friends, etc. And I'll speak to you again soon.